Now you see, kids, this is how we made Sims back in our day before all of your fancy little Tweety birds and Twitchbit kitchens or whatever. Cold opener for this one, unfortunately, summed up this whole episode, but I guess we do have to cover it anyway. Anyway, the show proper opened on Hana wiring her Bobby, which Doremi brought for her. Now you see, this is what happens when you buy those great value bottles. Actually, there are some nice subtle little details here that you could see, including how Doremi had not only put the cover on crooked, but also turned it the wrong way.
No, dude, you're doing it wrong! Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, not lefty-tighty mess it up because you're a loser!
Then, as a result of her carelessness, Hana ended up rejecting her as her mother. Well, okay, obviously this is going to be a Doremi and Hana episode, where they try to reconcile over this little slip-up, and the former learns how to be more careful. Right? Nah, that would make too much sense. And instead, after establishing that they were running low on magical seeds, on top of reminding us that they agreed not to use magic to raise Hana, Dodo offered her services. Oh yeah, kinda forgot that these little living bobbleheads existed. And I guess so did the writers, so I'm assuming they decided to make up for this by making this episode suddenly mostly be about them, in particular Dodo, which unfortunately led into... Really? We're doing this? Okay. Now, to be fair, at first the demands were fairly reasonable, until Doremi just decided to become a lazy ass. And again, I remind you, this episode started with our quote-unquote heroine making an honest mistake that she could have learned from, like how she should be more careful or mindful over caring for Hana, but nope, now it's the Doremi and Dodo show, after we haven't really seen the latter in what feels like ages.
That makes sense to me.
Anyway, after Doremi got home, we learned that Mrs. Harikaze had gone to some reunion. Thus, it was only kind of natural that the rest of the family would have to fend for themselves. Pop took charge and ended up bossing around her older sister, as she usually does. This would become important, as it was meant to parallel Dodo's own complaints against Doremi, as we'd even see very blatantly in the next scene. I think this was meant to justify the Pink Witch's behavior in this episode, showing how we all have our own issues and can sometimes lose track of what's important, so we just have to try and be patient with others. But honestly, I think Doremi was totally in the wrong in this one. First of all, these scenarios were very different. I mean, while I'm personally not of the opinion that Pop should have taken charge, as it's just another case of them over-pushing this character, she's also not wrong for making Doremi do her part of the chores, as it benefited all of them. Meanwhile, Doremi ordering Dodo to do everything was mostly just benefiting her lazy ass. In short, she made her fairy into a slave. And look, Doremi can be a lot of things, but I don't recall her being this much of a jerk at her worst. Now, of course, there are ways they could have justified this by building it up in the episode, maybe have Doremi go on a bit of a power trip because something actually fortunate happened in her life for once, but nope, 6 minutes in, after not really reflecting on an accident she caused, she just suddenly switched to jerk-ass mode and started abusing Dodo, who hadn't even appeared in the episode until then, and just 3 minutes more after that, we got the titular runaway, so just what even is the pacing in this episode? And yet, within just these 3 minutes, Doremi becomes the most unlikable character in the show, especially after this scene. After seeing that her seed plant wasn't growing, Doremi figured that she should water it. So of course, she had her tiny little fairy bring her a watering can that was over triple her size and weight, leading to predictable results. Yeah, it's totally your fault for not putting the watering can directly into my hands rather than me just walking a few inches to take it out of your hands. Yep, it's totally your fault for being irresponsible. Ah! Can we just stop here? I can actually feel my blood pressure rising. So yeah, we got the titular runaway of the episode, which at this point is absolutely justified, as this fairy has been treated just as bad as an Amazon employee. No, and Ro was also there. Yeah, anyone else forget about Ompu's out-of-nowhere fairy partner? Anyway, she informed the Ojamajo of what had happened, not that Doremi was listening. Is that a promise? In fact, can we get it in writing? I will say, the one kind of saving grace of this otherwise very unpleasant episode was Dodo's attempts at being the cutest little punk ever, as well as this little bit of black comedy.
ママ家出なんてダメだよ帰ろうよ嫌よもうパパには
These situations are just so alike, except that kid is likely going to be scarred for life. Aiko and Hazuki eventually managed to find all their partners and tried to convince Dodo to go back to her abuser, and if that wasn't bad enough...
大丈夫やってドレミちゃんきっと許してくれるって一緒に謝ってあげるから
Yeah, okay, I understand. Thank you. So yeah, I was just talking with my doctor, and he said I should probably lay off the anger this week, though fortunately, I have the perfect clip for this scene from my Delicious Party 34 review. You have nothing to apologize for! I mean, to be fair, my commenters did bring up some good counter-arguments for that episode of DPC that I didn't consider, like how the grandson did waste his grandfather's Oden, so he did have one thing to apologize for. I still say the old man was much more in the wrong, but I'll at least give him 1 point in his favor. Here, though, I actively refuse to believe that there is anything Dodo has to apologize for, as not only did Doremi start all of this because of her slovenliness, she also refused to acknowledge any of her faults. This resulted in her friends trying to cover for Doremi by lying to the fairy about her worrying about her. Yes, Hazuki and Aiko were complying with this abusive relationship. Way to go, episode. Yeah, managed to make me hate almost every main character, sans Ompu, who wisely decided to opt out for most of the remainder of this train wreck. And really, I was also kind of checked out of this episode, to the point that not even this early Pop Team epic joke could get a laugh out of me. Though, of course, Doremi did eventually see the error of her ways, which just makes me realize that comparison with the mother who was leaving her husband was a very apt comparison. While we never learned the exact details of that relationship, it does seem to play out like a typical abusive relationship cycle. One of them likely abused the other at some point, the abuser soon realizes their mistake, apologizes, and the cycle repeats itself. It's a well-documented scenario, and yeah, while I highly doubt the show will actually go in those sorts of directions, it's kind of hard to ignore the framing of it all. Generally, people aren't just complete monsters, so of course they will eventually feel bad, but that on its own doesn't automatically fix some of the deeper issues of stuff like toxic relationships, which unfortunately this episode both is accurately portraying and kind of encouraging by having the characters side this much with Doremi, whilst not sufficiently pointing out her faults. Sure, Doremi herself acknowledged her mistakes in a very well-animated sequence in the rain that's easily the highlight of this episode, and probably one of the best sequences of the season so far, but at this point, for me at least, it's too little too late. I think it's just way too rushed, and I can't feel any sort of dramatic gratification over this reunion after all of that unpleasantness. Hell, even the dramatic moment of her using one of her last seeds was made kind of moot, as just a couple minutes later, her overwired plan somehow still sprouted. Hey, can I see that for a second? I do need some new fuel for my stove. But yeah, the episode ended with everyone happy, including the wannabe gangster girl and the abusive parents reunited. Yeah, kid, you might want to get yourself emancipated sooner rather than later. Just when I think that weird cowboy gave us one of the worst episodes of the series, I end up getting proven wrong. I mean, sure, on a technical level, this was actually one of the best looking episodes of the season, especially the climax in the rain, but when it's for a story like this, where conflicts feel rather forced and rushed, it's ultimately kind of wasted. And honestly, it just makes me hope that the next episode is at least going to be marginally better. Oh, god damn it. But yeah, even putting aside the unintentionally awful messaging in my opinion, this episode was a bit of a structural mess. The initial few minutes of the episode weren't even about Dodo or the lesson of not taking your friends for granted. Doremi was careless when taking care of Hana and needed to learn from it. However, as soon as the fairies came in and she started treating hers like a slave, it became a tale of abuse and gaslighting where they tried to make it look like both parties were at fault in some way and utterly failed. Worst of all is that there just was no actual progression into it. Not only is Doremi usually not this much of a jerk, but there was no reason for her to mistreat her partner this much. One plausible scenario might have been to have that scene of Pop ordering her sister around play out first, and then Doremi could try to do the same with Dodo out of frustration, but nope, she was already ordering her before that. And even then, I really didn't like how Aiko and Hazuki ended up playing along with their friend's abhorrent behavior by lying to Dodo, making almost everyone in this episode look bad. And when all of the characters look bad, then even an objectively well-animated dramatic rain sequence like this can look like garbage. Thus, overall, I clearly did not like this episode, and for me, it might be one of the worst of the series. Again, I just wish the supposed good episodes will return soon, because now I'm starting to feel like I'm in a toxic relationship with this show. As we did with the Precure review this week, we do want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, which should actually be tomorrow when this video goes up. We do hope you enjoy your time with your families, and if not, at least you'll have an excuse to pick on the biggest turkey leg you can find. And until next time though, farewell for now my friends, and rain over there, and yet not over here. Just typical Honolulu weather.